Welcome back to the Stratosphere, and this time it's a little different. Yes indeed, one of you picked up on something I said in one of the other videos and suggested I do a comparison. With none other than the Lotus Elise, the S1 that I owned. So, as you can see, I'm wearing the appropriate shirt.
Anyway, Lotus targeted an annual production of 750 Elises. However, within just a couple of months of showing the car, more than twice that many people had plunked down paid deposits. Uh-oh.
At the London Motor Show, I put down a deposit for a Lotus Elise. Yes, Series 1. One of the first 200 to be built. In fact, I had no idea where I was going to get the rest of the money at the time, but that didn't really matter. Where there's a will, there's a way. Anyway, I did manage to find the money, and largely thanks to this man, but that's another story and quite a long one. I'm sure you're familiar with these cars and how radically different they were from anything that had gone before in true Lotus form. But don't take my word for it.
These cars exist because Lotus invented an entirely new, never done before in the history of the world, method of engineering and constructing an automobile.
By the way, thoroughly recommend that video and actually that channel. Very entertaining presenter with a lot of information. I was lucky enough to get a tour of the factory and see the car being built as well, which was quite something.
Autocar called it the 8th wonder of the world.
Anyway, I finally took delivery of it some months later. I can't remember how long it was. And the dealer offered me $5,000 on top of the retail price there and then, because they had quite a waiting list at the time. Needless to say, I didn't take him up on his offer. I wanted my Lotus Elise.
The perfect distillation of all of the philosophies that helped Lotus win more Grand Prix than any other company while Colin Chapman was still alive.
And it was everything I expected and more. What a fantastic car to drive. Anyway, enough about the Elise, and mine in particular. What about the Stratos? Yes, indeed, the Lancia Stratos, equally special in its own way. Please note the wardrobe change. Lancia wanted to set about regaining rally supremacy, and unlike anything they or anyone else had done before, they designed a car from the ground up specifically to win rallies. And then obviously had to worry about homologation thereafter, which was just a bit of a nuisance, really.
It was styled by Bertone, and it was completely impractical.
It therefore ticked all the supercar boxes.
And as Mr. Clarkson said, they kind of inadvertently created a supercar, which this young boy at the time completely fell in love with. Mainly because it was different. It was uncompromising. It was not a luxury supercar in any way, shape or form.
But unlike any other supercar before or since, it wasn't designed to be parked in Monte Carlo. It was designed to get there, like this.
Its absurdly short wheelbase meant it was agile, and the Ferrari power meant it was fast. So fast that it won the World Rally Championship 3 times.
And again, as Mr. Clarkson points out, win rallies it certainly did. Just like the Lotus 79 in Formula 1 about the same time. If you didn't have one, you didn't stand a chance.
What a fantastic car! This is one of the best cars ever made.
Yeah, I'd go with that. On the grounds of its achievement, but also that slightly more subjective thing of how gorgeous it looks.
I've actually never had the opportunity to drive an original Stratos. But that's kind of not the point of this episode. Things have moved on. If you didn't see the episode where I took the car to the Fountain Hills car show here in Phoenix, I urge you to do so. Long story short, we were lucky enough to meet one of the original mechanics from the Alitalia team back in the 70s, and he was very impressed with the Lister Bell, particularly the build quality, which apparently was far superior, not surprisingly, to the originals. Which brings us on to the question of how does the Lister Bell Stratos compare with the Lotus Elise? And before we get on to the driving, let's just look at how similar they really are in terms of being built for purpose. Let's look at the interiors to start with. No carpets, no radio, no electric windows, no unnecessary weight. Though I do have to say, Lancia took that a little bit too far with the window winders, which aren't even winders. Other major similarities, a short wheelbase, pretty much a wheel at every corner. Engine in the right place. Oh, okay, I know, this is all stuff you know already, right? Don't need me to point that out. The question was what they like to drive. Well, similar, but different. And do remember, we're talking about a Lister Bell Stratos, not a Lancia Stratos. I've never driven one of those. So the view from the cockpit is very similar. You've got a good idea of exactly where your front wheels are, which makes hitting that all-important apex very easy indeed, assuming you're not going into the corner too fast. The turn-in on both vehicles is remarkably similar. I'm not sure of the steering rack ratios or anything like that, but very similar, just point and shoot. That said, and this is only going from memory, of the Elise at least, the Stratos steering is quite heavy at lower speeds. Not quite on a TVR Griffith scale, but it is heavy. Again, from memory, through the corner itself, I feel that the Elise is probably more planted. Talking of which, and that said, I did throw mine into a field once. If you haven't heard that story already, I'll keep it short. It was a corner that I knew I could take at around 85. I went into it a touch too fast. There was a bump in the middle of the corner, which kind of unsettled the whole ground effects that the Elise has. And therefore it started fishtailing wildly, and yes, I ended up in a field, narrowly missing a ditch and a tree, and so that's one of my 9 lives anyway. In terms of other performance, outright speed, acceleration, that kind of thing, very similar. Neither cars are built to go ridiculously fast or be, 0 to 60 demons. They are sports cars for driving. Both have adequate power plants for the weight of the vehicle. My Elise used the Rover K-Series engine, just a 1.8 litre motor, which was quite sufficient to propel it quickly enough to enjoy. As you know, if you've been watching the Lancia Stratos series, that has the 3 litre V6 12 valve motor from an Alfa 164, which again is perfectly adequate to have some fun. Yes, you'll be left standing at the lights by any twat in a Dodge Charger, but you'll have the last laugh when he's in the ditch at the first corner. By the way, I have nothing against Dodge Chargers, and not much for them, actually. I don't really like their modern ones. The Challenger is different. I like that, but I digress. Though I'm not sure really what else to tell you. Honestly, my experience with the Stratos so far is limited, and brought to a sudden and nasty halt by latest proceedings with the transmission or differential or whatever it is. My memory of the Elise is equally limited because it was 25 years ago, I think, roughly. But in summary, I think I would say that the Lotus Elise is a better handling car overall. And that's with no disrespect to Craig and everyone at Lister Bell, because they have certainly improved the Stratos to a large degree. But at the end of the day, Lotus are Lotus, and that's what Lotus do best. Both cars are enormously fun to drive. They give you good feedback through the steering. You know where you are. You know what they're going to do most of the time. And they're enormously fun to drive, which is all that matters. Obviously, cost-wise, there's an enormous variant, whether you buy an S1 or an S2 Lotus Elise, whether you build your Lister Bell from scratch yourself or get them to help like I did, makes a huge difference in costs all round. And Elises are fetching good money now. There is an alternative in the UK and shortly available in the US, I guess, in terms of the 25-year period for import-export stuff, and that's the Vauxhall VX220. I know, it's a Vauxhall, not a Lotus. But essentially it's the same car, same chassis, with a 2.2 litre Vauxhall motor. And quite striking looking. Not quite as pretty as the Elise, but still a striking motor car, and I'm sure just as much fun to drive, if not more, with the extra power, which of course Lotus went to with the Toyota motor when they went to the S2. These surprisingly fetched a lot less money, I suppose unsurprisingly, but at the same time there were less of them made than the Elise, so in the long run they're going to be a rarer car, and maybe a good tip for a future classic, I don't know. I've been looking at some myself. The problem is I can't import them to the US right now, because they're not quite 25 years old yet, and I've got nowhere to put it if I got one. Oh, did I miss something? Comfort? Neither car is particularly comfortable. I wouldn't want to do more than 200 miles in either of them. And I'm not talking about the seats themselves, they're perfectly fine. But being somewhat of a lanky geezer, all my height is in my legs. And both in the Elise and the Stratos, it's just kind of the awkward position. And again, this is for personal reasons, I guess. You know, my knees aren't that great because I scraped them up a bit when I was riding bikes when I was younger, and there's probably some damage there. So I used to fairly regularly drive the Elise from London to Wales to visit my mother, and would always have to get out at some point and just walk about for a bit just to stretch my legs. The longest distance I've done in the Stratos was back from Phoenix, which was just over 100 miles, I guess. And again, you know, my legs felt it when I got out the other end. So neither car a Grand Tourer, but they're not designed to be. They're designed to be a sports car, and they're designed to just have some fun. And fun they are. If you have any specific questions that I haven't covered, and there are probably a few, please do leave a comment and I'll get back to you with my most honest answer. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I didn't ramble on too much. I guess if you're still watching, obviously you did, so please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, do so down here somewhere. And encourage others to watch my lunacy.